this is weird, and I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash for this, because I found a way to outperform the M1A. It is very niche. It works better with people like me that aren't headshot gods, and overall this has actually quickly become one of my main and favourite DPS style builds. And it uses the lightweight M4 simply because the lightweight M4, well, let me show you. So what you're looking at there, the yellow line is the lightweight M4's DPS, and the blue line is the DPS of the classic M1A. Now this is counting body shots only. Due to headshot scaling, that would be very, very different, I do admit. So like I said, this works best as sort of like a DPS spam, and overall you are doing about 26% more damage using the M4 than the M1A. The problem with the M4 is it's not very accurate and it's not very stable. Luckily, the set that this entire thing is around, obviously I've done 3-piece Badger, 3-piece Fenris, 3-piece Petrov, this is 3-piece Overlord. 3-piece Overlord is actually stupidly, and I do mean stupidly good. It takes rifles that you would typically consider to be not very good, like the M1A or the UCS. I'm telling you as well, the UCS is a beast. It's an absolute monster. Its damage ramp up, its scaling is near enough a vertical line. It's got stupidly fast fire rate, and it's actually got probably one of the higher DPS rates, or the highest DPS rate of any weapon in the game, -2. One of them's an exotic and the other one is coming pretty soon. But still, this build is quite unique simply for the fact that it allows you to use other rifles very, very effectively. It still works with the M1A. It basically turns the M1A into a pinpoint god because the reticule doesn't even move when firing. However, you do lose slightly more DPS than with the meta build, because it's obviously not the meta build. However, you actually can improve upon that DPS by using this build along with something like the M4. The M16 is a very good way to go. It's got a weird interaction with boomerang as well, that weapon, so maybe check that out. But long story short, this will outdamage an M1A in any capacity, -1. There is one field where the M1A cannot be beaten, and that is also down to the player. If you are able to consistently stack riflemen along with using perfect last cannon, vigilance, 3-piece province defense, all the shiny stuff, all max rolled, that is potentially completely unbeaten. You just can't beat it within rifles, at least. Things like Scorpio just mess with the whole math equation. But if you're running that with, essentially you're going to need to keep perfect last cannon constantly active, which is easy, vigilance constantly active, and max stacks on riflemen constantly active, while every shot you do, things like 8 out of every 10 shots has to hit the head. That will basically outdamage any rifle setup that you can do. However, if you don't, this outdamages the M1A. Depending on the consistency of headshots with both builds, this will outdamage it anywhere from something like 2.6% up to about 30% more damage. But again, it all comes down to how you play, how you want to play, whether you're good at headshots. Due to there is still slight movement in the reticule with stability and accuracy, so going for consistent headshots with this setup is probably not the best idea. You can go for headshots but you have to slow down your fire rate to a point of where M1A anyway. And the main reason this beats the M1A in DPS is the magazine size and the fire rate. We're still hitting pretty big numbers between 1.2 mil and 1.7 mil, depending on crit, headshot, boomerang, plethora of things, having vigilance active as well. But it's all down to the 51 round mag or 50 round mag, depending if you've stacked and reload, and the fire rate, which is where it really wins. You're able to do a fair chunk of damage pretty quickly and for a lot longer than the M1A. So DPS wise, as I keep saying, this is better. The problem we've had, or I've had at least, is trying to manage the accuracy and stability. 3-piece Overlord takes care of that completely. It's got accuracy on it as well as handling, which makes it pretty darn epic and safe to use as well. So if you are wanting to use a rifle other than the M1A, just because it's meta or whatever, you want to venture out into different territory, but you're not liking the recoil or the accuracy of those rifles, try 3-piece Overlord. It really does help. Now, before I get into the actual build, I want to go over some damage plots with different weapons that you can utilize with this build that work pretty damn well. One of them is a bit weird, and don't be fooled by it, so I'm going to get that one out of the way quick. This is the M16. As you can see, it's quite under par with the M1A. It's the yellow line, which is the M16, and the blue is the M1A. However, with Boomerang, it interacts very weirdly, and I'm not going to say how, just test it out, put Boomerang on it, damage to targets out of cover, all the good stuff. Try it with a build similar to this, because the recoil on it is pretty hefty, as well as the accuracy. Maybe even go for a braced on the chest and just have a laugh. It's quite fun, it's quite entertaining. The next one is probably the best option, really. This is the M1A CQB versus the M1A. Yellow line CQB, blue line M1A. This actually has a higher DPS rate, just simply due to the fire rate. Similar-ish in damage, but it's that fire rate. Magazine size is the same, however, it's less accurate. Not a problem with this build. This works very well as a boss burner because it just does all of its damage a lot quicker. So maybe try that. And then finally we have the weapon that apparently is probably one of the most hated weapons in the game, but I give you the highest DPS rifle in the game. It is the USC 45 ASP, which is a rifle variant of the UMP 45. It's the yellow line, in case you don't know, and yeah, this thing is stupid. Sadly, even with this build, it is still quite inaccurate and not that stable, so you kind of end up having to play it the same way as a SMG. Problem is, at that point, there is an SMG that just does more damage anyway. So, tomato. So, overall, in conclusion, good build. Thoroughly impressed with 3-piece Overlord. Would do it again. Recommend it to others. Very high damage output. Allows you to utilize other rifles that are considered to be bad, but actually have higher DPS scaling. It was just their accuracy and stability that came into question. And it really does help out. I've been using this in a group capacity as well, and I'm doing stupid amounts of damage compared to other people. Openly played with a few friends that use the meta M1A builds, and I out DPS and out damage them by a fair chunk. Overall, it is just a really solid way to go, and would, out of all the builds I've ever posted, this one I would say deserves the most recognition if people are willing to have me. Anyway, let's do some DPS checks on the chest. So we're hitting about 1.3. on the old Critteroonies. Boomerang does proc regularly due to the fire rate, and obviously we're at 60% crit chance. So we're just doing very, very good damage. Obviously on the non-crits we do drop a fair chunk. To consistently get headshots we can-ish do it. I'm trying to spam as quick as possible here. It's a little bit more difficult, and if you are going to do it I would suggest trying to do it at closer range. Using that 3.4 sight just so that we have the option to zoom in a little bit as well as have an open view. Using this with something like focus doesn't really work as the recoil is still pretty damn hefty. Obviously for specialization we are using the lovely sharpshooter simply because it does special things. Anyway, lightweight M4, rolled to damage the targets out of cover, and we have boomerang. As you can see, the accuracy and stability are a bit weird. Stability is obviously a lot lower than the accuracy, but don't worry too much about that. That's just recoil control using your controller or mouse. Secondary weapon, I am using the shield splinterer, which preliminary testing actually shows it's 100% the most powerful assault rifle in the game, so I'm going to be playing around with that a lot more. Utilising the lovely Coyote's mask, just because with DPS builds it's near enough best in slot. I mean, you can swap things around and use the Dodge City, but yeah. Walker and Harris chest with glass cannon on, just because I'm slowly getting used to using glass cannon, and that actually quite helps out. 2-piece Walker and Harris gives us 5% weapon damage and 5% damage to armour. Obviously running a bit of vigilance, crit chance, crit damage, weapon damage, all the good stuff. Overlord armaments holster, we've got the 3-piece running, which is rifle damage, 20% accuracy and 10% weapon handling, which really does just help out this build in general. Obviously Fox's Prayer, and we're also running some Overlord gloves just to help us out. As you can see, we've got some decent crit damage and crit chance going on here. Overall weapon damage is pretty good, but honestly I'm loving this build. I really would recommend people try it out. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.